Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar on how to avoid AI hallucinations in your research writing. I'm Nolita Coelho, your host for today, and I head up the product division at Paperpal, an AI research and writing tool. Um, a few months ago, we reflected on what drives us and the product philosophy at Paperpal, and what came out of that exercise was simple. AI should fuel creativity, productivity, while really safeguarding rigor, integrity, and originality of your work. So, in short, PaperPal's AI is one that we really aim partners and brings out the best in your writing, in your research. And to achieve this outcome, we realized the tools and technology can get us halfway there, but it's equally important that we enable students and researchers to engage more thoughtfully and effectively with AI. And emerging from this thought was the AI Exchange Initiative that brings you this session today, and many more like these to address some of the real challenges with AI in education and research. On that note, I'm sure most of you are eager to get into the meat of the session. But before that, I'd like to start by playing really a short video that highlights how PaperPal's AI supports this academic journey. So if you'll just give me a minute, I'll share my screen. And yeah, I think we've got that. Okay.
You bring the idea. Paperpal gives words to it without ever losing your voice. You chase the research. We review it against journal standards. You question what's missing in your essay. We catch it before it affects your grades. You put thoughts on the page. We shape them for your dream journal. You choose what to cite. We ensure every reference is accurate. You stand by your work. We protect it with uncompromising integrity checks. You bring the will to publish. We stand with you from first idea to final draft. Paperpal, AI that brings out the best in you. You bring the idea.
Okay. Thanks. Who stop sharing. Thanks for watching that. I hope that gave you a glimpse into what we're really trying to do. And with that, we'd like to move on to the main segment that will be delivered by Professor Emmanuel Sekleves from Lancaster University, UK. But before he introduces himself and I hand over, just like to do a little bit of housekeeping. He has a very exciting presentation with a lot of graphics and some interesting tips for us. And to ensure you get the best of it, it's important you figure your way out around the tool today. So I'm just going to share a quick slide that will walk you through how you can use the platform. So just give me a second. There you have it. So as you can see over here, at the top on the side of your screen, we have the chat window where you could actually just share your experiences, drop in your thoughts, anything that you've experienced that resonates with what we're hearing today or discussing. You can use the Q&A window, just the Q&A icon just below that, to leave any questions that you'd like answered towards the end of the session when we have our Q&A segment. If you are finding that your monitor is smaller and you want to kind of zoom into the screens, then to the little left of the sidebar at the top corner, you will see a little icon with 4 arrows. So you can click on that and that will allow you to watch in full screen, which means you'll be able to see every tiny detail on the slides. And if you are having any trouble with audio, then you could kind of put on some headphones for the best experience. And don't worry about it. You will get all of the slides as well as the recording of the presentation within 24 hours of the session. So you don't need to take notes. You can, pay full attention, engage, be here and enjoy, the rest of this session. And with that, for some context into the session, we'd like to run two quick polls, and I'd invite, the first poll to be pulled up. And do we have that on screen? Okay, the first poll. So our session today is about AI hallucinations in research and academic writing. So we'd like to know which type concerns you the most, so we can get the most out of that. Okay, looks like we're getting some interesting responses in there. Okay, I think most people are fairly clear on the challenges that they have. That's great to know. I think we have a good set of responses. I think we'll head into our next poll, which is how confident are you in identifying AI hallucinations? So we can answer this one. And we're going to test you at the end of the session as well. So, yep. And yes, I've seen some very, very believable facts from the various AI tools. Probably wrote a thesis on myself as well when I asked it to. So, very confident. Uh, Great. Okay. We're fairly, I think, a humble audience here, somewhat confident of being able to spot them. Great. Well, for all those folks who have little or no confidence and really looking to, bring that up, we hope this session will really help you walk away with those practical tips, strategies on how you could spot these. And with that, let's dive in, and over to Emmanuel. If you could start with introducing yourself and then take over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nolita. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending wherever you join us. Although from what I can see from the chat, we have a crowd that is quite global, which is brilliant. My name is Emmanuel. I do apologize for my unpronounceable surname, Chekleves. I'm based at Lancaster University in the UK, and I post on LinkedIn offering insight and knowledge as a professor on how to complete your PhD on time, secure academic job. But what I'm really passionate about is about this novel tool of AI and how it's shaping research and academia. And like any double-edged tool, there's two sides to it. It can really enhance the productivity. It's like having your own research assistant, but at the same time, you need to know how to use it so it doesn't ruin your reputation. So when Paperpal reached out and asked me to talk about AI hallucinations, I was really excited because it's a topic I've struggled with in my personal research, but also I see others struggling. So the aim of today's session is to talk about what AI hallucinations are and why recognizing them matters in research writing. I'm guessing those of you that are here, you probably understand the importance, but I'm going to spend just a bit of time going through that. Understanding the risks of having these unverified AI generated content in our writing, and see how tools like Paperpal, as well as others, can help maintaining the academic integrity, which is crucial for the work we're doing. I'll provide you with a guiding framework and a nice acronym that you can use to check and ensure that you can spot those AI hallucinations, and there will be a Q&A as well at the end. So let's dive in. What are AI hallucinations in academia? There isn't a single definitions, but I would say there's three core elements. And when we did the poll, actually, the vast majority of you highlighted those. So obviously, it's citations that they're not genuine. Simply LLMs and AI tools, they create them out of nowhere. And we'll see some examples of that. Misleading facts, which is quite difficult sometimes to spot, especially if you're researching a topic you're not familiar with or in a field that is not your own. And of course, distorted paraphrases. And I have some examples to show you how what seems like, fairly harmless, in fact, can really change the meaning of what you're saying and what you're writing, and therefore it can have an important impact. So let's explore each one. So fabricated hallucinations, I think, is the most straightforward, and it often happens when systems they try to close the loop. They know they need to provide some evidence and citations for arguments made, and sometimes they make up these citations. It could be using real authors, but the titles, they don't correspond to material that has been printed, or the dates are wrong, or the journals, they don't even exist. And here I have an example, as you can see. Now, if you were to check that, you will see this paper, author and journal, doesn't exist, right? So my approach, and you probably hear me say that quite a few times, is trust, but always verify, right? Verify every citation that you're given to make sure you're on the safe side. What I found very useful, a useful way to doing that, this is the framework I use, using Google Scholar. If you're using a Chrome browser, there is a plugin you can install for free. Simply copy and paste the citation, put it there and see, does it exist? Is the author and the title and the journal real? And that exercise, although the staff may think like nuance, in fact, it becomes a habit, and it's really, really helpful to have. Now, when we look at tools at Paperpal, you can actually ask questions, and when they provide, and even when you write text and you want to see what evidence or how you can back up the arguments that they made, you can use functions like the cite text that allows you to select relevant sentences or pieces of text and find related citations. You can in fact go then and check those papers, and this is picked up from a large corpus of over 250 million papers, which is brilliant, because when I was doing my PhD 20 years ago, things like this didn't exist, and it was, I was spending so much time on that logistics. So features like that help you really focus on the main thing, which is understanding the science, reading it, and apply critical thinking. Now, this is quite straightforward, as you can see from the example here. And the great thing I like is that you can click then on the actual citation without having to leave the platform, and you can check the paper. You can access it, you can read it, or you can say, I want to read it later, so I'm going to save it in my library, and Paperpal has a library that allows you to do so. So eventually you store that. So you can create your own database of papers, which I do for my different research projects. Moving on, misleading facts. And for me, this is the most important. This is more crucial, because AI hallucinations, if you're citing within your own research area, you know most of the key authors. But the misleading facts is something which it's very difficult to spot unless you very well know your own discipline. And if you're an early career researcher, or like me, you're an interdisciplinary researcher that looks and works across different disciplines, you can always do that. And this is an example. The human genome contains approximately 100,000 protein coding genes. Probably if you read a statement like that, you think, and you're not in medicine or health or clinical studies, you think, yeah, that's probably right. But in fact, it's not. The actual number is 20,000 to 25,000. So imagine if you quote something like that, in your thesis, in your assignment, in your publication, or even in the discussion, it's an issue. It immediately hurts your credibility and whatever piece of work you're submitting. And on the right, you can see the correct approach. So always cross-check statistics, numbers, dates, and key findings against the primary sources that are provided to make sure what you put in there is correct. Because again, it's your reputation, it's your credibility in line. And this is equally important if you're at the start of your career, or if you are an established researcher, because either way, it can really hurt it. Distorted paraphrases was another aspect, and I have a nice example here. The original text is climate change may contribute to increased hurricane intensity in some regions. Now, if you ask AI to paraphrase, sometimes you may get a result like this. Climate change causes all hurricanes to become more severe globally. You may think that more or less this is the same, but actually semantically, and this is the linguist in me, my first degree is in linguistics, it's quite different, the meaning, because it changed the may to causes. It shows certainty. This does happen, and some regions too across the world globally. So again, although it looks harmless, this tells a very different story. And I have on the right more the accurate paraphrase that you can see it keeps the same meaning. So always compare AI paraphrases with original text to make sure it's accurately portraying what you wanted to say. And the original meaning is there. So just a couple of words can make a massive difference, as you can see from this example. So why does this matter? It took me 19 to 20 years to build my career, but it can only take a couple of minutes to completely destroy it. And as I said, it doesn't matter which level in your career you are, whether you're starting or you're established, it's very important. And you don't want to be having it questioned that way. We've been witnessing a massive amount of retractions in publications, and we started to see that also in PhD theses and assignment work in universities, with work that contains hallucinated content, and that is now taken very seriously by editors, by universities, and by funding bodies as well. So it can, again, lead back to the loss of credibility, but also loss of jobs or degrees. And of course, it's a wasted resource. If you spend all this time correcting or responding to editor queries, managing the consequences of that, you may as well do everything manually. You save time. So it's important you have a compass and understand these AI hallucinations. And I'm going to reveal now some of the best practices to use to avoid AI hallucinations. This is a framework that I've been using, that I've been sharing with the researchers that I work with. And those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, you're probably aware that I like acronyms. And this is simply because my brain doesn't have a lot of capacity to remembering things. So these acronyms, they help me remember important things. So here's one for you, trust. And we're going to go in very much detail under each one of these points. But what I suggest is when you get the slides, take this slide, take a screenshot, or print it and stick it somewhere on your monitor next to your computer until it becomes habit, this process. So you follow it throughout every time you use AI tools. And of course, feel free to share it with others. So let's look at each one of these points. First of all, you want to be treating AI as an assistant, not as an authority. And it's brilliant because, again, for many of us, or people like myself, we didn't have that back in those days. Now you can have literally on your computer, on your pocket. an assistant that can help you with a lot of the mundane and logistical, technical tasks we need to do as researchers, such as putting the right citations in references and so on. But treat it as an assistant that, again, you need to verify what they provide. Again, trust, but verify. So going with the mindset that, the AI tool suggested that, so it should be right. It's not the right approach. The right approach is, okay, I got this output. Let me actually verify it to see that it does exist. It is relevant and appropriate for me to use. So what I recommend is to use AI tools to generate a list of potential keywords, for example, for your literature review, but don't take this for granted. Then is the critical thinking you apply. You decide which keywords are actually relevant to your research questions, and then verify the search results for yourself. So again, it's like having a buddy, an assistant that can help you brainstorm more keywords that you can think of alone, especially if you're staring a blank screen. But then you apply your own intuition to say, actually, from those 15 generated, these 5 are interesting. Or in fact, I'm going to combine keyword number 2 with keyword number 7 to create a new keyword. Rely on verification, not assumption. So we've seen an example before with the genome sequence that I gave as a stat. And as I said, if you're not an expert in this area, it does sound reasonable, 100,000. But we've seen that is not. So I'm very cautious always with statistics, checking the original sources. And here's an example. You may use AI to summarize a paper, and the paper says that these authors found 85% effectiveness on an intervention. Now, before citing, you need to read this paper to actually confirm, was it 85% or was it more within a range? Was it in a specific population? Was it in a specific geography, location? So that when you cite it accurately. Because, for instance, if the paper found that there was 85% effectiveness, but only, let's say, on older users, it changes completely from saying that it was applied to everyone. So again, those small, nuanced outcomes can make a massive change. And these are the type of things that others researchers will be questioning whether you put words like that in your thesis or in a manuscript you're publishing. And since we talked about using AI as an assistant, and we talked about summarizing, using AI to help you summarize the papers, I want to share with you very briefly a function that I find very helpful, which is being able to interrogate, to talk with a paper, something, again, I didn't have before. So it's quite simple, the process. You can import a paper you have from your own library, but you can also have a conversation with it, I would say. So you can ask questions like, read the document carefully and help me summarize the main arguments or claims made in the paper. So what is this really paper telling me? And you can ask them to provide a detailed response or just a very brief summary. So, okay, this paper is not relevant to what I'm looking, or it's very relevant. I'll save it in my list and go through it later. There's several ready-made prompts that enable you that conversation, and Paperpal has several of these. But you can also ask your own questions. So I'll always, when using AI tools, I want to ask questions like, what are the research gaps identified in this paper? Because for me, this is the key. So you see, you get a detailed response, and you get the points in the paper or the pages where this is. So again, you can go and check, is it exactly like that? And this way I find also it helps me to understand and read the paper better, because it helped me to see different areas of the paper that contain this important information that I want to know. And you can ask additional related questions. So you can go in more detail, and you can ask the AI tool to help you come up with different questions. So the reason I keep saying having a conversation and asking questions is because this is a pedagogy which you use a lot in academia. It's called inquiry-based learning, and that's the best way to ask questions. That's always what I encourage my students. And it's amazing nowadays you can do that with papers. And what I also like is sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of time, I'll be honest with you, the academic language we use in publications, it's not always the easiest to understand. And this is someone with 20 years experience talking about it. And especially if you read papers in other disciplines, which I often have to do, there are some terms or some concepts or some constructs, they're not very clear. So what I like about with tools like Paperpal is you can ask it to explain a bit of text. So there was a technical expression here I wasn't very much sure, and I asked, what does it mean, so I can get a bit more information. So again, it's like having an assistant. You don't necessarily need to always go back to your supervisor if you're a PhD student, or ask another colleague. You can get a first-hand approach. What is also great is you can find out more related papers. There is a technique we use quite a lot when we use research called the snowballing method for finding references. That is, you take the paper you're reading and you look at who they referenced, and then you take those references to read those papers, or from there to find other papers. And again, with tools like Paperpal, there's two ways you can do that. You can ask it to list related databases that they've matched from the database. Or the one I really like is to ask what other papers related to this paper I'm kind of reading, I should be reading. And what I like is that it provides me papers on different topics. So then I can go and explore them. But I wouldn't stay there. Whatever tool you use, whatever format you have, the key point is to take that knowledge to build your knowledge base. Whether you're using Microsoft Excel, I'm probably old school doing that. As you can see here, you can use Notion or other tools, but make sure you take then the summaries or the information you get, and you gradually create your own database. And this is important because whether you're writing a literature review for a paper, for an assignment, for a thesis, it helps you to write it itself, because you can always go back to that, compare papers, synthesize the knowledge you get, and you don't have to go back and reread everything, a big mistake I did during my PhD years. And of course, if you're doing future research in this topic, you can always go back and re-explore it. Now, back into our trust model. It's important to uphold intellectual authorship, because at the end of the day, you are the one who is writing this work, whatever it is. So for me, copying and pasting AI-generated text paragraphs directly into dissertation papers, it's a no-no. My advice would be to use it for brainstorming, maybe getting some of the key themes or key topics, and then writing your content in your own words with your own analysis, because you want to have your own voice. Also, LLMs and AI tools, they tend to produce text which looks very similar. And apart from the fact that now we're synthesized to it so we can spot it, it means that if everyone is using AI and they copying and pasting generated paragraphs, then everyone's writing looks exactly the same. And that's not what you want to. You have your unique voice in the paper, so it really stands out. And I have an example here that you can use it to organize the themes from papers you have, like in the database that I've showed you before. But then it's up to you to review how these are organized. You add your critical analysis and your voice explaining. At the end of the day, it's your intellectual contribution, not the AI's. It's you, the author of the publication, the one who will be getting the PhD or finishing the assignment, not the AI tool you'll be using. And S standing for study and engage critically with research. You want AI to use AI tools to help you identify relevant papers, but then you need to read them. The difference is that rather than spending days, weeks to scan databases to find the relevant papers, now AI can help you find the most relevant ones. So then you can focus and spend more time in reading. So in fact, you could be more productive because you can read more papers and spend less time in trying to identify and finding those. And also there's other benefits. I quite often explore and use AI tools to help me create comparison tables, listing, for instance, methodologies that different papers may use, or different findings, or different interventions if I'm looking into health-related areas. But I will always go back and read the actual method sections and see, is there anything that AI has missed, or something else important that I need to include there. So the message is, it's your assistant. And as an assistant, it doesn't do all the work for you. It does some of it. But at the end of the day, you're the one that has the intellectual leadership. And the last one of the trust model is to track those subtle hallucinations. As we said before, carefully check dates, stats, author names, journal, technical terms. And here's an example, a very practical one. Let's say that AI writes the study included 250 participants with a p less than 0.05. Now, you notice that the p-value doesn't describe the sample size. And now that's a subtle, I'll say, hallucination of mixing concepts. So you need to correct it by verifying what is the actual sample size and the p-value for the specific finding discussed. So always go back and check, because that subtle hallucination can have a massive impact. And speaking of hallucinations, another thing I would say generally in the sphere of responsible and ethical use of AI is to be able to be transparent about the use of AI. And I like when tools, and Paperpal is one of them, they incorporate that, they embed it into their philosophy. So there is the AI footprint feature that allows you to highlight, because you write a text and you don't always know or remember which one was generated by AI, which one was paraphrased, which one was left original. And sometimes, you don't want to be starting from scratch. So using features like that enables you to see which was the AI generated or paraphrased text, which means that when it comes to disclosing it, is a lot easier, because you can look at that. And Paperpal also has an AI disclosure feature. Actually has some templates. Usually this is a question I get asked by many researchers and students: how do I properly disclose AI? So Paperpal has done a great job, because you can select different types of template depending whether you're a student and you're disclosing it for an assignment, or you're using it for a journal paper, or for another reason. And it will generate it for you. And you can even select the some of the key publishers that they have different standards and different ways they expect the disclosure, and it can generate an initial draft for you that you can then go and modify and enhance. So it's a good practice, and something I'd always encourage. Even if you don't use AI, you should still say, that I haven't used, or if I used, this is where I used it. And linking it back to the AI footprint, it makes your job a lot easier because you can specify where and how you've used it. I can see that there are some comments and questions, so I'm going to pass now the virtual floor to Nolita to take us to the next part of the webinar.
Thanks. Thank you, Emmanuel. That was great. I actually learned a fair bit today as well. I think in the very traditional sense, we think of hallucinations as just, verifying that the source exists. So, we tend to look for those references, click into them. But I think how you highlighted with those examples, right? How AI can actually hallucinate when it comes to, just changing the fact very casually, or even, just making small word changes that can have, significant meaning changes. And those are some of the things, our editing team that kind of, works on PayPal's editing feature, they're pedantic about it. You can't really change or make those changes when editing as well. And yeah, I can see if not, prompted well, and if not really done well, or even reviewed closely, you could introduce some critical flaws into the writing. I think thanks for that. I want to also call out, the audience. I think some great insights shared there. I think, Shabnam from University of Connecticut, I think she agreed with you, and I think we all do, on, verifying citations is important. But I think, what I echo what you said is you can't avoid the reading stage. And I think reading, I saw some questions in there. How do you avoid, plagiarism, and how do you avoid AI detection? But I think all of those questions are moot points, because if you are doing that reading, if you can use tools to find papers faster, to be able to help you read more effectively, to make it more engaging. As you said, these tools are excellent. But if you don't really, take that effort to go in to understand what papers have to say, and then kind of, have that reference, you can't develop a point of view. And if you don't have a point of view, then it's pretty tough to look at what the AI has to say and say, okay, this is not what I wanted to say. And I think, that's where it comes in. Language and polish, I think those are other aspects. But I think the heart of academic text, right, as you said, is your original contribution, your criticality. So thank you for that. And it was great. I think we have a whole set of questions that we need to get to. But before we do, I saw a couple of questions also around the tool, and how you could use it, and it could be more accessible to many of you. So yes, while this session did show how Paperpal helps you avoid these kinds of hallucinations, I think a lot of the strategies are applicable to any tool that you might use. It just might take you few more steps, several more steps, in order to verify, to make sure you open up that PDF, find that piece of text, and then confirm it. I think with Paperpal, like someone said, we're really trying to balance AI, both the reliability, and make it a lot faster and accessible and reachable. But with that, what I want to quickly share is, just give me a second. I'll pull a slide up on my screen. So for those of you who are actually interested in, okay, so I'll just skip through down to, sorry about this. Yeah, I think for those of you who are interested in trying the tool, we do have a free version. It does have a certain number, limits on what you can use in a day, but you could, sort of try it out. And if you're interested in trying out the full version, there's a special offer for the audience today, where you could, just apply this coupon at checkout and get a 30% off on all Prime plans. And if you are already on, PayPal Prime plan, and you feel that you'd like PayPal to assist you in your productivity going forward, you can also upgrade, and we have some offers in there for you. So that should hopefully make PayPal more accessible to those in the audience who are looking for that. And we'll be dropping in before we head into Q&A, and I'll stop sharing my screen right now. We'll be dropping in a link for feedback. So do share that. I saw some comments also coming in what other sessions we could run. So do drop in your thoughts on that as well, so that we can continue this AI exchange initiative, right, and really make the thoughtful and effective use of tools possible. So with that, I think let's head into the questions. Okay. I think the first question that I'm going to take is, how can early career researchers balance efficiency and reliability when using AI tools for literature review? So maybe Professor Manuel, if you could take this one. Yeah.
Sure. Probably with reliability, you mean obviously that the information is accurate, but also in an ethical way. The way I do that is to have a framework on generally how I go about using AI in general and AI tools within my research framework. So let's take the example of literature reviews. As I said, I would use it to help me identify papers that it will take me a lot longer to find through manual searches. But bear in mind, I would still do a manual search on the side, especially if I'm looking at a discipline that is not very well indexed in databases, because that way I can discover papers that other databases that don't. I would use some of the examples also that I presented here to talk to the papers once I discover them, to very quickly see if I want to read then the rest of the paper. So this is a great way of sorting through all the findings, because you may get hundreds and hundreds of papers, but you won't be able to read 1,000 papers. And then once you find the papers you want to, you can extract the key information. You can have this inquiry-based learning by having conversation with the paper and extract the key information into your own database. I would also, you can also use AI after have you created your first draft to get, if you like, a second view of whether there's something critical missing. So again, I would use it to ask questions. This is what I've drafted for a literature on that. Is there anything critical that I'm missing? So maybe there is an important topic I didn't consider including. So again, I will see, okay, this is something I need to add, so I need to do more research and I need to do include. There is a lot more, but I hope with just those couple examples, I provide some ways you can go forward to ensure both efficiency and reliability.
Thanks. Thanks, Emmanuel. I think that did answer the question, but we have a related question, which I don't know if we have a mathematical answer to, but be great to know your views. I think someone in the audience has asked us, to what extent can you use AI to write academic papers for publishing? I think this is a great question, right? I think we're looking for some black and white responses here, but what are your thoughts?
I would say it's a response that you cannot yet answer with a yes or no, and it depends on a number of factors. One is obviously where you're publishing or where you're aiming to have this work, whether it is a paper or an essay, and what is the rules they have. My stance is most of the writing should be mine, because I want my paper to be unique. I don't want to sound like everyone else, so that people can discover my work. But also I would look at the policies within the institution. So for instance, a lot of universities like mine, they have a red light system. So there are some modules, some courses where you're not allowed to use any tools, red. There are others, orange, where you can, but it needs to be disclosed. And there are others, green, where you have to. they want you to use for certain creative elements and exploration use of AI tools. So, and the same obviously will apply for publications. So you need to know what the policies are. But at the end of the day, it should be the majority your work. AI is an assistant, is not your shadow writer.
That's I guess that's a good point. I think my team's just popped me a related question, which is very interesting, a bit challenging, but I'm going to ask it anyways. And also because we were talking earlier, but a large majority of our users are not native English speakers. So it is inherently challenging to be able to convey your thoughts and ideas in a language that's not as familiar. So I'm going to ask this question, but so in this user's case, they're not a native English speaker, and then I always need to proofread my paper and check grammar and language. At the end, it is AI which gives the correct voice to my manuscript. So how can I avoid that it sounds AI created when it kind of is? So any advice for folks like this?
Yeah, and I have to say that I empathize because I'm non-native speaker. I may sound like one, but I'm not. I'm originally from Greece. I came to the UK, in fact, to study English and stayed since then. So I learned the hard way. And even to this day, I still proofread my own work. But I do understand that if you are not native speaker, you feel that you need someone to proofread that. And AI tools, they're good for proofreading. But the way I would use them, and I use them and I recommend to a lot of my PhD students, who the vast majority are international students, is this: use it to learn. So, because when I was proofreading my work several decades ago, when my fluency was not there, the problem I had is I didn't know what I was writing, what was wrong with my writing, you know. And this is where AI can help. It can spot the areas where the issues are. Maybe it's in the grammar, maybe it's in the semantics, maybe it's in the sequence of words. So once it can point this to you, you can correct them, and you can correct them manually. You don't have to copy and paste what it gives you. This way, you learn, but also you ensure you won't have then these issues of um, plagiarism detection tools marking what has been generated as content that has been plagiarized, because it's your own work. It's just it has been paraphrased.
I think that's great advice, and I think it answers a series of other questions around, how people have asked about humanizing or really, bringing in the original voice. So thanks for that. I think there's nothing better to humanize text than to be writing it on your own. So with a little bit of assistance from the AI rather than the other way around. So agreed with that. I think it is, a slightly broader but related question. I often wonder if AI assistant reduces our natural intelligence to deal with these issues ourselves rather than having a sounding board or a brainstorming buddy. Maybe this is too broad of a question. But like your views on that, because you talked about, using AI really to find those gaps.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the great thing, obviously, about LLMs and the way they work is they have this large database of content and data that you can easily interrogate and search compared to using, more traditional manual methods. And some of this data, if it's well trained, it can give you more accurate questions. But as a researcher, the value when you do research is when you interact with your peers or with your supervisor when you're learning, or if you're an early career researcher with someone more senior from you, and you have that discussion that helps you think, reflect, sometimes get this light bulb of new ideas simply because you had that chat. But this is not always possible with everyone being so busy, and sometimes you don't want to always bother, or at least that's what I was feeling when I was an early career researcher. So using an AI tool as your assistant, or as your soundboard, is brilliant because you get that effect. I'm not saying don't talk to people, of course, but that's your first pass, if you like, where you can get a bit more refined responses. So then when you could go to your colleagues, or when you can go to your supervisor, you could have also something else to offer, and you can have an even more, I would say, productive conversation.
I agree with you, and I think what LLMs are inherently very good at is critiquing. Somehow, you ask them for advice, they can be really good at it. And just to plug in something in there, one of the things that we incorporated into PayPal, which we thought would be a good way for people to find opportunities to improve without having the AI do the work, is a feature we launched called AI Review. So it does exactly that. It has a bunch of questions, prompts that are pre-configured. You could simply have your text on screen, click on those, and the AI will actually critique your work. But it doesn't tell you how to fix it. It might give you an example or a direction, but it really just forces you, as you said, to think. So sometimes when you don't have access to that person, to someone else to bounce those ideas off, I think AI can be a great buddy. So thanks for that.
This is brilliant. If we can just add something into that you remind me by saying that, is that critiquing is very important. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it may be people around you that don't want to give you criticism, especially if you work in a culture like in the UK, where we're very cautious, very diplomatic in the way we critique. Sometimes we don't even do that.
Yes.
But you really need this critique to be able to improve your work. So having that is brilliant, because you can get another voice, you can get a critical friend.
Yeah. Self-critiquing is the best way. Nice. Great. I think we'll jump over to another question. I think we've talked a lot about writing original work, and I think predominantly publishing, and some amount of assignments. But I think this question that we have from the audience is, in is it okay to create a research, is it in order to use, I think it means, is it okay to use AI to create a research proposal, master's or PhD, while following the precautions you've given? I think you talked about rules and other aspects, but I think this is a good question. Where really can AI be used beyond publishing works?
Um, I'm trying to read the question to see how it's phrased. I mean, obviously, you don't want to use AI to write the whole proposal for you, because if that's the case, they should go and do the master's or PhD, not you, right? um, but aside this joke, you can use it to help you identify the steps that are required in drafting a proposal. So that you need to start by thinking about what would be the aim of your work, whether it's a master's or PhD, and then what would be the research question, what databases you should be searching to get that initial literature review, what methods may be available for the objectives you set. If I was to use the analogy of cooking, um, you use AI to help you get the ingredients, but at the end of the day, you are the cook, and it's how you use those ingredients to develop the recipe and the dish.
I think that's very well put. And I think that's true for anything that you're doing. I think using PayPal or using any AI tool, right, to just get you to the starting point. I think outlines is another great way. You can
Yeah.
feed AI your notes and ask it to structure into an outline. You're not getting the AI to write it for you. So getting a starting point, but not there. How can you really just get that help, but ensure you're not just getting to prepare the entire dish? Thank you so much. Okay, I think I'm going to jump over to a few questions on the tool side of things. Um, so let me go into some of these. How do we trust that the papers shown are the best to go through? is in the worthwhile papers found behind paywalls and subscriptions. So maybe let me answer this from a PayPal perspective, and then perhaps Emmanuel, you could add on. Um, so I think, as it was shown in the demo, what PayPal does is, one is we tap into a repository of scholarly publications. So we aren't looking beyond that into the general web. So that's one layer of filter that we do apply. I think the second thing is, what um, you know we, the way that we try to empower you is to be able to show you not just papers that are, if you ask a question, right? So does green tea really help with obesity? We will give you a response and show you papers that kind of feed into that response. And a lot of these responses are developed based on papers where we have the abstract available, but we do also have paywalled papers in our repository, which means that we're also incorporating paywalled papers into this response. It's not just open access papers. But based on this relevancy, you see that response coming in. So you might see anywhere between 2, 4, 10, and maybe more papers cited in the response. But in addition to that, what we've identified is, and we have received this feedback from a librarian once, this is not the only literature that is there, right, to talk about this. So you'll see a very long list of related papers that we also provide. Now, of course, it's up to you to figure out, and there are various indicators that will help you figure if that's something that you want to explore, save it for future reading. But these are some ways in which PayPal tries to expose as much of the scholarly literature out there, and this includes, as I said, published works, both open access, paywalled, as well as preprints that are accessible. Anything else, Emmanuel, you'd like to add to that? You talked about more ways of going out there, right, and looking for papers. So
Yeah, on top of that, I would say that the traditional way of looking for papers is very lengthy. It tends to get you papers mainly in your discipline. What AI tools do brilliantly is they get you this interdisciplinary perspective when you ask a question where they'll pull papers from different disciplines. But of course, they don't get the whole literature. So my suggestion of what I do is I combine the best of both worlds. And in some disciplines, in any case, you have to do that. You have to go even sometimes to specific journals because they're not indexed. So use both approaches. But using AI tools help speed up some of the process, give you a good initial round of relevant papers, and then you can have more time to go for a more deep dive for other sources.
got it. Great. I think that is true. I think the traditional way of doing the keyword and the Boolean searches, it's rather painful. Um, Great. I think the next question is, how secure is the interaction and information with PaperPal once interaction and drafts available and transparent to others? Um, I'm glad you asked this question. I'd like to assure you that everything on PayPal is 100% secure. So anything that you feed in terms of your own document, your work, just strictly stays within your account. You can even delete it on demand. We have an entire disclosure on how you can control your data. So nobody has access to it. We do offer collaboration now, but you can strictly choose whom you want to share it with if you are collaborating with a peer on your writing. In addition to that, even if you upload papers, let's say for you could find a paper that's recommended by a research platform, go back to your library, find the full text. You could upload it onto Paperpal to chat with it, but that paper is not accessible to anyone else. Again, we ensure that's the case, um, so that it's completely secure within your account. And most importantly, which is something I think many of us tend to take for granted, but many AI tools, do use a lot of your prompting and the text and the data you put into it for their own training. And that's something, given that we're predominantly academic, it's, by principle, it's something that we don't do at all. So every model, everything that we're using within our systems, are contained within, our environments, and none of this data feeds back into any models for training. So in these ways, we pretty much ensure everything you're doing is secure within your control, and strictly private. I think moving on to the next question. As the number of tools are evidently growing, what makes PayPal better than other similar purpose tools? Maybe we'll end with it. I know at the last minute. Um, I think might be a slightly biased response, but I believe our purpose, as I mentioned, is to really look at, assisting with various parts of the process. So we see a lot of tools out there that could help you with one specific thing. So it could be either fixing your grammar or proofreading it, and that's honestly where we started as well. Or they just help you, maybe use the AI to write or to develop things, but what we're really looking to do is to span and see, through the entire process at different checkpoints where you can use AI. And I think over the last year, I'm very proud to say that we've been able to kind of get into those various spaces, because I think the end goal is not just to have AI automate a step, but to help you at different places. And I think within our ecosystem, we're able to, you know, get you that assistance within Microsoft Word, which is very, very important for most academics, researchers, where every single formatting piece needs to be kind of figured out. And you can pretty much use every feature we have within AI. So right from finding that research idea, finding papers, chatting with them, being able to develop your draft, get your own words there, track how you're really using AI, and then eventually proofread it. I think being able to support you in all platforms, I think that's, in my opinion, what sets us apart. But happy to hear, Emmanuel, if there's anything that you find different or particularly interesting about Paperpal.
Yeah, apart from the features that you mentioned, for me, what is important for PayPal or any tool that um, people here today they want to integrate into the workflow is the transparency, and is the transparency in terms of the security and privacy that you mentioned. Your data is not held, is not used for training, and this is important because as a researcher, you don't want your ideas to be used by others. You are bound quite often from ethics applications you do in your universities, and if you have grant funding as well. But also the important thing is the transparency in disclosing, helping you identify what has been generated by AI and highlight it, as I've shown, but also emphasizing on disclosing the use of AI. So I would generally, I'm very favorable of tools who do those. We offer the private security and the transparency in terms of the disclosure, because this is the ethical way to use for AI in research.
That's true. Thanks for that, Emmanuel. And I believe there's a lot more for us to do. And I know we keep getting a lot of feedback. But if you do have more, we also have a Discord community. But I'd welcome any of you, if you have questions, if you have thoughts on what are the other aspects related to AI we could discuss next. Please join in, keep the conversation going. And I'd like to thank Professor Emmanuel. I think it was a great session today. I was glad we could answer so many questions. I think those responses, really thoughtful and spelled out really well. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the day, evening, and a night, depending on where you are. Good night.
Thank you for my end as well, everyone.
Mhm.